So persuasion is about who says what to whom. And basically, who is the communicator or the speaker? And then says what will be the message, to whom will be the message recipient or the audience. So there's a difference between persuasion and coercion. So how is persuasion different from coercion? Okay, what do you guys think? So coercion is the practice of persuading someone to do so with force or threats.
Like persuasion, you're more independently choosing.
Yeah, very good. Very good. So it's about free will. So persuasion, you have more free will to make a decision. Coercion, you will have relatively low free will, and persuasion, you have relatively high free will in the decision-making process. So that's the difference between persuasion and coercion. Now, can you think of any example that's coercion and not persuasion? Any example? Asking a lot, or with a sort of implicit threat. Any example, like specific example? Yes.
Would like blackmailing be considered coercion?
Yes. Yes. So you're trying to make people to do something with threats. Do you guys know about the Title IX? Yeah. So Title IX is about like how do you put it? So we have to do the training every day. Not every day, every semester, my bad. Glad I don't need to do that every day. So basically, we as grad students or instructor or the professors, they're not allowed to have a relationship with undergrads. Do you know why? Yeah?
The power dynamic?
Yes, very good. Oh, give me a second. I forgot to record. Okay. The first couple minutes will be not as loud, but we'll make it work. So abuse of power, very good. For example, when an instructor or professor has a relationship with their students, there will be a power dynamic. There will be a hierarchical structure there, and which makes the instructor has more power to coerce the students to do whatever he or she wants, right? So that's a good example for coercion. Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes.
We're going to replace the PC, but we'll be back
Okay.
after your class.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right. So persuasion and compliance. Do you need to?
Oh, no, I think
Okay.
actually, I think it started working as soon as we were about to leave.
All right. Cool. So what about compliance? What's the difference between compliance and persuasion? Yeah.
I feel like persuasion, you actually like change your mind, but compliance, you're just deciding to go along.
Very good, very good. So compliance in definition, that's a question. It refers to changing one's behavior due to the request or direction of another person. So compliance focus more on the behavior change, but persuasion focus more on the attitude change. Okay. So what about obedience? So you know the difference between obedience and compliance? Yeah.
I mean, I was gonna say you don't necessarily have to be like compliant, like someone can tell you to do something and you don't desire to do it, but like out of obedience you can do it.
Could you repeat that? So compliance, someone asks you to do something, but you don't necessarily want to do it?
Compliance like allows you to change your behavior
Uh-huh.
with your own choice, or like you can
Okay.
be obedient to someone else's directive.
Mhm.
Like actually choose it.
Very good, very good. So obedience, it's involved with authority figure, right? So here, the individual needs to be in a position of authority to make people obey. And then for compliance, it does not rely upon being a position of power or authority over others. Yes?
What's the ethics in using compliance in a study?
What's the ethic? Compliance, it's okay. I'll show you some studies. Yes. But you cannot coerce them to do it.
Yeah, I read a story, I think it was yesterday, and it was about caffeine and its effects on long-stay psychiatric patients, and
Mhm.
it was an older study.
Yeah.
So like, as I was reading, I was like, oh, these are all ethical things.
Mm-hmm.
And then they took blood samples to figure out if they actually complied with the caffeine thing, and
Yep.
I was just interested in seeing like, the ethics of compliance.
Yep. I'm gonna show you some examples in the next couple slides. Compliance, it's okay. However, there's a fine boundary line that you don't want to cross. It's very good. So can someone give me an example of compliance and an example of obedience? For online students, because I'm using my laptop, so we can't really hear you. If you would just type in the chat box, that would be great. For you guys, make sure this is recording at once. Yep, it's recording. Any example for compliance or an example for obedience? Yeah.
Like with the instructor-student relationship, like if there's no relationship, then
Mhm.
the student just complies, but if there's that power dynamic, then it's obedience.
Wait, so when for the instructor and the students have a relationship,
Like if they don't have a relationship,
they
then
don't.
the student's just like choosing to comply, but if they do, then there's that like obedience.
okay, so if the instructor asks them to be in a relationship, because so compliance is you are complying to their request, but there's no authority figure. Does that make sense?
So it'd have to be like someone that's equal to
Yes.
you?
Yes.
Okay.
Because for us or for professors, instructors, you cannot only so not only you cannot date someone who's in the department, you can also you still cannot date anyone that's outside of the department, even as long as they're in the same school, even at the campus, you cannot date them. So there's still a power dynamic. So it has to be someone that's equal to you. Right. Any other examples? Okay, we have some online students. Compliance, turning the TV down because your roommate is taking a test. If they ask you, if they didn't ask you, you just turn it down. It's just you being nice. But if they ask you, hey, I have a test tomorrow, could you turn it down? And then you turn it down. Compliance, very good. Obedience, turning the TV off because your parents told you to. Very good example. And then I think compliance has to do with an equal or peer, where obedience has to do with the level of authority. Very good, that's a definition. And then obedience, example would be staying at home for a pandemic because the government says so. Yeah, yeah, the government is the authority here. Very good, very good. All right. So make sure you know the difference between those terms, and you might need to identify them in your exam. Okay. Okay, so what about conformity? How is persuasion different from conformity? Yes.
I feel like with conformity, you don't really change your mind, you're just like settling, whereas persuasion, you actually do have that like change of mindset.
Yes, so conformity, it's you might still change your attitude, but maybe weaker. But very good, very good. So I'm gonna give you the definition. Conformity is a type of social influence involving a change in belief or behavior in order to fit in with the group. So you still change your attitudes and behavior, but the reason will be you want to fit in instead of, yeah, I really thought through about this idea and then I really want to change my attitude. You just want to fit in. Right? So there are two types of conformity. The first one will be the normative conformity. This is when you don't want to be different from others. And we also have the informational conformity. This is when you follow what others doing when you have no idea at this situation. Does that make sense? The difference between normative and informational. Any questions on this conformity? We're about to do some exercise, and I'm going to ask you what type of conformity this is. Okay. Just making sure if online students have questions before we do that. So we good? Okay. So I'm going to ask you to watch this video. It's called the ASH study, and pay attention to what the experiment is like and what the participants are asked to do. And you need to tell me what type of conformity they're doing here.
Will be taking part in.
Hold on. Can you guys hear with my laptop? I don't know if I can. I don't think there's a way to transfer to the mic here.
Try going to the little drop down next to the microphone.
Right here?
And then you can change your microphone and speaker.
Sound system? Oh wait, which one? This one, right?
Turn down.
The other one more,
Just-
yeah.
To where-
Oh, right here?
Yeah.
Alright, let's see. This will work.
Will be taking part in.
Nope. I think it's something here that I need to do, but I don't see a button that I can push for audio. There's only the screen. For online students, can you guys hear? I'm gonna just play this for a little bit and see.
And today involves the perception of lengths of lines. As you can see here, I have a number of cards, and on each card there are several lines. Your task.
Okay, so online students, they can hear. Can you guys hear? All right, I think this is the loudest I can go. All right.
task is a very simple one. You're to look at the line on the left and determine which of the three lines on the right is equal to it in length. All right, we'll proceed in this order. You'll give your answer.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, the fifth person with the white t-shirt. The others are confederates of the experimenter and have been told to give wrong answers on some of the trials. The experiment begins uneventfully as subjects give their judgments.
2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3,
But on the third trial, something happens.
2, 2, 2, 2, 2.
The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence.
1.
Ash found subjects went along with the group on 37% of the critical trials. But he found through interviews that they went along with the group for different reasons.
1. 1. They must be right. There are 4 of them and 1 of me. 1.
This subject's yielding is based on a distortion of his judgment. He genuinely believes that the group is correct.
1. 1. 1. 2. 1. 2. 2. 2. I know they're wrong, but why should I make waves? 2.
In this case, the subject knows he is right, but goes along to avoid the discomfort of disagreeing with the group. Here, the distortion is at the level of his response.
2. 2. 2. 2.
In the previous experiment, the naive subject stood alone against the group. In this variation, Ash gave the naive subject a partner, here seated in the third position, who also gives the correct response.
1. 1. 2. 1. 2.
With a partner, yielding drops to only 5% of the critical trials compared to 37% without a partner. Although subjects report warmth and good feeling toward the partner, they typically deny that he played a role in their own independence. The partnership variation shows that much of the power of the group came not merely from its numbers, but from the unanimity of its opposition. When that unanimity is punctured, the group's power is greatly reduced. Sometimes we go along with the group because what they say convinces us they are right. This is called informational conformity. But sometimes we conform because we are apprehensive that the group will disapprove if we are deviant. This is called normative conformity. The strength of the normative factor is shown in another variation carried out by Ash. In this variation, the subject is told that because he had arrived late, he would have to write his answers. Subjects in this private response experiment are exposed to the same amount of misleading information as other subjects, but they are immune from any possible criticism by the group.
1. 1. 1.
And this enormously reduces the pressure to conform. Conformity drops by 2/3. Ash's experiment is a classic. It reveals how people will deny what they see and submit to group pressure. It allows us not only to observe conformity, but to study the conditions that increase.
Okay, so what type of conformity this is? I couldn't hear you guys.
Normative.
Normative? Very good. So for those people who really think that the group is right, it might be informational for them, but I still argue that's normative because that's the reality. You can't just say that, oh, that line is different from this line. And they say that, oh, other people must be right, but they know deep down what they see or what they saw, right? So I kind of argue this is mostly normative. If there is, it will be very little informational conformity. Very good. Let me see if online students have any questions. So, okay, they say normative. Very good. Okay, for the next one, again, you're gonna watch the experiment and then you tell me what type of conformity this is.
This hotel conference suite has been prepared for a focus group discussion on internet shopping. But all is not as it seems. We've been busy. place is rigged with 4 hidden cameras and 6 concealed microphones. And psychology professor Dominic Abrams is watching from our control room, which we built in an adjoining suite.
Now it's just a question of sitting and waiting.
Right, so this is a questionnaire all about kind of shopping habits and everything. So just move that off your chairs.
Our first participant is Mary Mizuno, a London student who thinks she's arrived early.
Faucet?
What she doesn't know is that behind this door there's about to be a serious fire in the hotel kitchen, or at least the illusion of one, created by a smoke machine and some sound.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to adjust the audio. This is just ridiculous. Let's see.
On her face.
Ah, work.
What will she do?
She's now noticed the smoke and is concerned. At this point, she decides to investigate to find out what's going on. She's immediately taken responsibility for figuring out what to do.
Mary does the sensible thing and evacuates quickly. She even leaves her bag and coat.
As I've never been in a fire situation before, I tried to remember the kind of things that you're supposed to do, so I left my stuff and just went out.
But Mary was on her own. This time, we've planted 7 actors who are all in on the experiment. We've said to them, when you see the smoke, do nothing. Our second participant is Lauren Heffernan, also a student. What will she do?
In this situation, she'll be following a script. The script is partly written in her mind. It's a script which is borrowed from things like sitting exams. Most situations like this have some element of expected or scripted behaviour.
But what will happen to her script when we make a slightly unusual situation very unusual? Nothing to start with, so we get her attention. Now, how long before she dashes out of the room?
She's checking increasingly to see what the other people are thinking. But who can she appeal to? The answer is nobody. She turns to the norm of the group: ignore the smoke. In a real fire, the people in this group will be in very serious danger by now.
I was looking for some sort of reaction from someone else, even just the slightest little thing, that they'd recognise that there was something, going on here. For me to kind of react on that and then do something about it, I kind of needed prodding.
She's waiting for someone else to react. Why isn't anyone else reacting? She feels uncomfortable. She doesn't want to embarrass herself by taking the lead, taking action. But something is definitely wrong.
Lauren stayed in the room for 20 minutes after spotting the smoke, concerned but immobile. The fire brigade say that if this fire had been real, even if flames hadn't burned through the door, she would have died of asphyxiation in this time. In the end, we had to ask her to leave.
What about him? I was surprised that I didn't do anything at all. I was just literally waiting. I just thought that someone else is surely going to say something soon. And because no one else did, I just didn't react at all.
We tried the experiment 10 times, and the same thing happened over and over again. If the person was on their own, they left quickly. If they were in a group of 3 or more, they stayed, rooted to the spot. The average length of time they stayed, 13 minutes. In real fires, people die because of behaviour like this. In 1979, a blaze at Woolworths in Manchester killed 10 people.
The fire occurred during the day when the store was occupied by hundreds of people. Most of those people managed to get out quite safely. The people that died in the fire were actually using the restaurant at the time.
But what?
Alright, so what do you guys think? Normative or informational? Informational? What about you guys? Normative? No opinions from Garrett and Meredith?
I can't quite see the difference between the
I
two.
know.
Like,
I feel like it might still be normative.
like is normative when you, like
So-
when you know what the correct answer is? Like what the correct response
Yes,
would be?
so normative is you should know what to do, but you don't want to stand out. You want to fit in.
And informational, you just don't know what to do, so you follow.
Exactly. Informational is you don't know what to do in the situation, and then you look at others' behavior, you follow along.
Okay. I think I was wrong.
Normative? Do you guys still think it's informational?
I think it could be a bit of both. It depended on the subject, I
Mhm.
suppose. I mean, how many people have actually dealt with being in a fire situation before?
Mm-hmm. So something say informational, something say normative. So you're right. It's a little bit, well, not a little bit both. Mostly it's normative because let's say for most people when we see smoke, we know we need to get out, right? And even you argue that one of the participants might have argued that she had never been in a fire. I don't know if that's what she argued, I forgot. But even if you have not been in a fire, when you hear the beeping sound and the smoke, that's an alarm. You should know that's signal dangers. So you should do something. So I would say this is mostly normative. It could be informational if people really don't know what to do when they see smokes. Okay, very good. However, on the exam, it will be very clear. I will tell you whether they know what to do or not. Okay. All right, next. Oh, so we have a lot of experiments like this, and you notice they have cover stories, right? They kind of lying to participants what the purpose is about in this study, so that the participants don't behave differently. That's what you can do in your study as well. So you can create a cover story as long as you don't like harm the participants.
This hotel
Okay, next.
The gentleman in the elevator now is a candid star. These folks who are entering, the man with the white shirt, the lady with the trench coat, and subsequently one other member of our staff, will face the rear. And you'll see how this man in the trench coat tries to maintain his individuality. But little by little, he looks at his watch, but he's really making an excuse for turning just a little bit more to the wall. Now we'll try it once again. Here's the candid subject. Here comes the candid camera staff, 3 of them at least. And this man has apparently been in groups.
Okay, we don't have time to show like all the videos, but if you're interested, you can go back to watch them. They're definitely also very informative because conformity is so powerful that it alters our behavior and our cognition. So what do you think? Is it normative or informational? I couldn't hear you.
I said informational,
Informational?
but I feel like it could be both.
I think if it's one of those elevators where it has doors on both sides,
Uh-huh.
then it'd be informational because like
Yeah.
you think everyone's gonna leave out the other side. But if it's just like a straight wall, then that's
Mhm.
normative.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, so it could be a little bit both, but I would say it's mostly normative again, because if you have been to an elevator, you should know face the front. And I don't think it looks like a door here, but if it looks like a door in reality, since it's not good quality, you could argue, okay, that's informational. Very good. Okay, this one.
We set up a hidden camera experiment to see if this woman would stand up at the sound of this tone, simply because everyone else is. You might be thinking you'd never go along with this. Or would you? just 3 beeps, and without knowing why she's doing it, this woman is now conforming perfectly to the group. But what happens if we take the group away?
Elaine, please.
Okay, now she's alone. The crowd is gone, and nobody is watching her, except our hidden cameras. What do you think she'll do? She's now conforming to the rules of the group without them even being there. Now, watch what happens when we introduce another outsider who doesn't know the rules.
Have a seat.
Questions arrived. And slowly but surely, what began as a random rule for this woman has now become the social norm for everyone in this waiting.
Alright, so what about this one? Informational or normative?
I think it's informational.
Mm-hmm.
Because like, they don't really, like, they would respond to a beat that way.
Yes, very good. So it's informational because we are not taught to respond to beeps by standing up. Very good. We don't have much time for discussion, but we're gonna move forward. Okay, so there are 2 routes of processing the message. One is the peripheral. In your book, they call it spontaneously or heuristically. And the other route is central or the thoughtful route. For peripheral, they focus on cues and heuristics. They're quicker and it takes less effort for the audience. However, they change weaker attitudes. For example, it's the emotion appeal in ads that we talked about. Do you guys remember using the guilt appeal in ads, and then funny humor appeal, what else? Sex appeal, stuff like that. For central route, they focus on the content of the message more. And it takes longer and it takes more effort for the audience because they need to think about it consciously. And it changes stronger attitudes. One example would be political arguments. You don't just look at whether the speaker is charming or whether the message that they're sending out is funny. You actually think about the message and you consider whether you agree with them. So that's the central route. Any questions on the peripheral or the central route? Okay, I think we're good. So we have one. Oh, normative. It should be informational for the last video, but anyway. Okay, so no questions on the 2 routes, right? Okay. So now I want you to have a discussion. It'll be short. So which route should we take? Peripheral or central? What do you guys think? When we try to change other people's others' attitudes through persuasion.
Depends on the attitude you're trying to change.
Very good, very good. Can you give me some example? When would you want to use peripheral? When would you want to use central? Like anyone? Yeah, go ahead.
If I'm trying to get my friends to go to a party with me, I go for peripheral.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was trying to change let's do an example of the political views.
Yeah.
And I'd use central.
All right.
Because the party's more like, you go from like a pathetic way of trying to
Yeah.
In a sense, when you're trying to be more logical.
Okay, so you're trying to use like emotions,
Yeah.
right? It'll be quicker, and it's a small decision that you don't really need to think about. Is it gonna affect my future, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully, you don't get too drunk and then engage in dangerous behavior. Very good. Central. Besides political views, what else? Religious views, right? What else? What kind of majors you're gonna choose, right? You need to provide sufficient information for the other party to make a decision. All right. Since we don't have much time, we're going to continue before I take a look at this. So Francis said that peripheral on more mundane attitudes or when emotion is involved. Central when matter is more serious, deciding a career, thinking about a relationship. Very good. Well, thinking about a relationship, a lot of times it can be peripheral. Like you don't even know why you like that person. So, yeah. Or maybe thinking about a long-term relationship or like a marriage, you will engage in more of the central route. But usually, what I have learned or what I've heard is a lot about peripheral. You look at the person, whether they look nice and whether they sound funny, whether you just feel good about them, right? You don't really think about all the details. Yeah. Okay. So we have two moderators for persuasion. One is the audience motivation to process that message, and the other one is the audience ability to process the message. So you kind of need both, right? Because if people are not motivated, they're not gonna pay too much attention on the message that you're sending out. Or if you're trying to tell them something that's very complex, they don't have any idea about, they are unable to process your information or your message. So, low ability or motivation, the participants will focus on the communicator or the source. So they will focus more on the cues or the heuristic, whether the speaker seems credible, whether they are likable, whether I like them, do they sound funny, because I just don't have the motivation or the ability to process what he or what she's saying. For a high ability or motivation group, they will focus more on the content of the information regardless of the source. Does that make sense? Okay. That's why we have the sleeper effect, and it's in the book. This is when we remember the content of the information but forget the source regardless of credibility. A lot of times when you hear about information, at the time you might know, oh, this is not credible. But a month later, 2 months later, you might still remember the information, but you might not remember the source. So you will think that this information is credible, but in reality, it's not. You just don't remember where you got the information. Have you had that before? Like, I don't remember where I heard this from, but blah, 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 blah. And when you go back and check, it could be credible, it could be not credible. Okay. And yeah, question.
Oh, I have an example.
Yeah, go ahead. Of course.
There is a newspaper on campus that's similar to the Onion, but it's like an Asian version.
Okay.
And they put out a article about a couple weeks ago about how they were going to put Adderall in the in like dispense machines in dining halls and stuff. And my previous manager didn't know it was a fake thing. Or at least she did it first, but then like forgot.
Yeah.
And then she was noticeably upset. She was
Yeah.
like, "Am I gonna have to sell Adderall as my prescription?" So yeah, it's sort of a sleeper effect for her because she forgot that it came from a satirical newspaper.
Yep. Very good. So, yeah, just be mindful sometimes when you can't remember where you got the information from. It might be better to check before you believe in that opinion, or you try to persuade other people using that information. Because if other people finds out the information is not credible, you become not credible to them, and then they're not gonna trust you next time. All right, very good. Well, if we didn't have the problem with the computer, we'll have time to do this like a mini game. Is try to create an advertisement or message that persuade me or other people to do something. For example, how would you persuade people to eat healthier? Or how to ask them to exercise more? Which route would you use? Would you use the central route, or would you use peripheral route? Or how would you go about it? We don't have much time to talk about this. We have about 3 minutes left. So I'm gonna just flip the class real quick. I want you to teach me how to prevent persuasion. We talked about persuasion and how we persuade other people, but how do we prevent that? One will be the forewarning, and the other one will be the inoculation. Can someone give me a definition or example? Yeah.
Forewarning is like when someone tells you that you're about to be persuaded, like, like in the textbook I had an example, like you're going to a party and like your friend that's taking you is like reminding you that you're gonna have like peer pressure.
Very good, very good. Very good. So when you are prepared for this persuasive message, you're less likely to see, what's the term? It's not conform, comply. You're less likely to comply. Right? Okay. What about inoculation? I'm gonna see how many online students we have today. Man, we have 5 students in class. Disappointing. Let's see.
It says
10. Okay. 15. Just 10 people didn't come. Come on. Thought you guys would be more. I don't know. Alright. Should I start to count attendance? No? No attendance? Alright. Alright. I'll just. Because when we have less people, let's say 5, it's hard to get responses, and it's hard to have like a discussion. But, well, just don't engage in social loafing. Yeah?
So inoculation is when to build somebody's attitude you mildly attack it, right?
Could you explain that a little bit more?
So perhaps somebody has a kid, they want them to not do drugs.
Yeah.
Maybe they go casually like, hey, you want to do some drugs today? And the kid says, no, of course I'm not going to do drugs. And he asks him why. And he gives him reasons so that he has those reasons in his head. He's already set up for it.
Yeah, but that example is not exactly right, because so inoculation is kind of like a vaccine. You expose them a weaker form of that persuasion. So if you don't want them to do drugs, you actually need to give them some drugs, like a little bit. So that's not like the example that I want to use, right? It's not gonna do well because it's just a slippery road. When you have a little bit of drugs, you want to do more. So, yeah.
Perhaps like toddlers when they're playing with toys and you want to teach them how to share. Maybe the parent will remind them at that time that their friend took their toy and didn't want to share, so that they remember next time maybe you should share because you didn't like that feeling before.
Would you say that's we don't have time, we're out of time, but just remember you need to have a weaker form of that persuasion message. So try to think about whether reminding them whether you like that experience or not is a weaker form of that persuasion. But I'll let you guys to do the thinking. Reminders, exam 1 is next Wednesday, and ask questions early. And have a good weekend.